Okay, so in the last tutorial, I showed how to use time remapping to speed up our clip to the exact length we need it to be. But then we ran into a slight problem. You see, when I play this back, it kind of looks pretty terrible. But let's think about why that is. Well, you see, the clip is moving through time in a very stiff, linear way. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, to get a better understanding of what I'm talking about, let's go ahead and open up the graph editor. Now, if you've never done that before, all you're going to do is you're going to select your clip or your keyframes, and then you're going to go over here and click this little graph icon. Okay, what the heck are we looking at? Well, if we use our scroll wheel, by pressing Alt and scroll wheel, we can zoom in just like that. And this does look kind of intimidating, but it's actually not so bad. You see, the y-axis here represents the length of the original clip, whereas the x-axis is the speed at which we move through the original clip. Now, I know that sounds kind of abstract and hard to understand, but let's try to understand it with some practical examples. You'll notice that on the y-axis, it goes up to around 6 seconds. But why is that? The clip itself has been sped up to be only 2 seconds. Well, if you recall, the original clip actually was 6 seconds. So what this graph is telling us is that we're moving through those original 6 seconds in just 2 seconds here on the x-axis. Now, this should make more sense if I go ahead and slow this down by dragging this keyframe out here, and now our clip is much slower. Okay, so now if we look at the graph editor, you'll see that it looks a little bit different. The 6 seconds is still here because the length of the original clip did not change. The original clip is still 6 seconds, but we're moving through these 6 seconds at a much slower rate here on the x-axis. Now let's go ahead and do the opposite. If we speed the clip up much faster than it was before and just bring that over here, we go over here, look at the graph editor, you'll see now that it's still 6 seconds in the original clip, but now we're moving through those 6 seconds much faster, so the clip itself is obviously much shorter. It's more like 1 second. Now, if you don't completely understand that, you don't need to worry. It will make a lot more sense as we practice, but for now, let's go ahead and bring it back to what it was. Okay, so why is this graph editor even useful? Well, right now it's not really useful at all. All it's doing is showing us what we already know. We already know that we're moving through the original 6 seconds in just 2 seconds. This is not new information. All it's doing is giving us a visual representation of what we know. So it's actually not that useful just yet. Well, fellas, listen to me very closely. When it comes to video editing, using and understanding this graph editor is probably one of the most important things you could learn. Seriously. And we're about to see why. So you'll remember in the beginning of the tutorial, I mentioned that this clip looks very bad because it's moving through time in a very stiff, robotic, and linear way. Well, this graph editor is actually showing us exactly that. This line right here shows us how we're getting from second 0 to second 6. And how are we getting from second 0 to second 6? We're getting there in a straight line. Each frame moves through time the same amount. There's never any variation in how fast we are going, and we are moving through the clip the same speed the entire time. For most footage that you watch, for most videos that you see on YouTube, this is actually what you want. You know, if I'm talking to you, you don't want there to be random changes in speed in my voice, right? That wouldn't really make much sense. But for an edit like this, we definitely don't want just a stiff movement through time like this. So if we want to change how the clip moves through time, we need to change what this line looks like, because this line determines how we're moving through the clip. So in order to do that, let's close out of the graph editor. We're going to go ahead and select both of these keyframes. We're going to right click, we're going to go to Keyframe Assistant, and we're going to press Easy Ease, or alternatively, you can just select both of them and press F9. Now that these keyframes are easy eased, let's go ahead and go into the graph editor once again. Immediately, this line looks completely different. And by looking at this line, we can actually tell exactly how this clip is going to move through time. What this is showing us is that the clip is going to start off very slowly. It's going to gradually speed up. It's going to speed up pretty quickly, and then it's going to gradually slow back down. And it's going to do so in a very nice and smooth way because we have these really nice curves that represent how it's moving through time. And so if I play this clip back, you'll see exactly what I mean. Right, that already looks pretty different. We start off basically not moving at all, quickly speed up, and then gradually slow back down. Okay, now that definitely does look a little bit more interesting, but it's not quite what we want. Well, fortunately, the graph editor actually allows us to manipulate what this curve looks like. So if you select this keyframe, you'll see that these handles appear, and you can actually drag and manipulate these handles to make the graph look however you want. So if I go ahead and I do something like this, what do you think this clip is gonna look like? Well, just by looking at the graph, you can actually tell pretty easily. What's gonna happen is it's gonna essentially just blast through the beginning portion of this clip, and because we blasted through the beginning so quickly, this line over here is almost flat. So this flat line basically represents the clip coming to a stall or basically not moving at all. Like this section here, it's pretty much just going to be a still frame because it's just a flat line. So if I play it back, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so now it's actually starting to look kind of cool, but let me ask you a bit of a tricky question. So when I manipulate the curve like this, am I making the clip faster? In other words, are we going through these 6 seconds faster than before? Well, technically no, right? Because what's going on here is we're just manipulating how we're getting from second 0 to second 6. And although the clip is significantly faster in the beginning, this speed that we gain here is actually taken from the end of the clip. So because we went so fast here, now the remainder of the clip is just very, very slow. So the total clip length didn't actually increase or decrease. We just manipulated how we're moving through the clip, right? That's a very important difference to understand. If we were to actually speed up the clip, right, that would entail moving this keyframe back and forth, right, which would speed up or slow down the clip accordingly, right? But we're not doing that. All we're doing is changing how the clip is moving through time. Okay, so now let's take a look at what happens if I do something like this. Let's bring this handle back to how it was, and let's drag this handle like so. So what do you think, based on this graph, this clip is going to look like? Well, by now you should probably be able to tell me that it's going to start off really, really slow. This clip is basically not going to be moving at all in the beginning, and then it's going to gradually speed up, and then most of the clip is just going to finish really quickly at the end. If I play it back, we should see exactly that. So that's also pretty cool. So now what I want for this edit, and for what you typically want with most edits transitioning between clips, is for it to sort of start off quickly in the beginning, and then the clip to slow down just a little bit, and then quickly speed back up, right? Gradually speed back up. So how can we do that manipulating this graph editor? Well, it should actually be pretty simple. All we're gonna do is we're gonna drag this handle to do something like this, and then we're going to drag this handle to do something like that. So what this line is showing us is the clip is going to start off really quickly. It's going to kind of, in a really smooth way, kind of introduce itself. And then it's going to slow down very gradually. And then it's going to gradually speed back up to transition into the next clip. So looking at it, it should look like this. Now that's already a lot better than what we had before, right? If we go back to just the straight line that we can make with this graph editor, this is more or less what we had before, right? So if we take a look at that, we can see it's very flat and not dynamic at all. But when we manipulate the graph to sort of have this really cool ease in and ease out effect, we get something that looks like this. That camera is coming in, slowing down, and then going back out. The players are coming in, slowing down, and then going back out. It's just a very, very nice look, and this is what you see with most edits. Now, how exactly this graph looks is up to your discretion. If you want it to slow down a little bit more aggressively and to enter in a little bit more aggressively, you could really crank these handles up like this, and then you could really crank this handle down like this. So what this is going to essentially do is have that clip blast in really quickly, slow down to almost nothing here on this flat segment, and then it quickly exit, right? And then like very gradually just whoosh, get out of there. So it's going to be an even more exaggerated effect, and that would look like this. So that's also interesting, right? That might not be exactly what I want for this particular edit, but that option is also available to you. You can also change how it enters versus how it exits, right? So maybe you want it to enter in kind of like this, but then you want it to exit very, very aggressively, right? So then you would have something that looks like this. So that's just another different look, and vice versa. You can also have it enter very, very kind of bombastically. You could have it enter in very, very aggressively, and then you could have it exit out extremely subtly like this, to the point where you're not even really going to notice it that much, right? And that would look like this. Okay, perfect. Now something you want to be careful of is to make sure that when you're manipulating these curves, this line is not actually going down. You want to always make sure it's either flat or going up, right? Because if this line is going down this way, what's essentially going to happen is the clip is actually going to go in reverse, right? And now that could be something that you want to actually experiment with, is your clip kind of coming in, reversing, and then going out. But you have to be very intentional with that, and it's definitely not something you want to have happen by accident. For example, if I really, really crank this up, and then I really, really crank this down, and then we just kind of keep cranking it up, cranking it down, cranking it up, cranking it down, what's going to happen is this clip is going to come in, and then because the line is going down, it's actually going to go in reverse, and then it's going to go back to normal, right? So that would look like this. Right, so it's kind of a little bit awkward. Now, some edits definitely do this really well, where it comes in, goes in reverse, and then goes back out, and that's something that you can definitely experiment with. With my edits, because it's kind of telling a chronological story, the characters are moving through time. It doesn't really make sense for them to go in reverse. But if that's something that you want to do, this would kind of be the way that you'd achieve it. Is you'd manipulate this graph editor in a way to have this line kind of go down like this, right? Going the wrong way, essentially. But for our edit, we definitely don't want to do anything like that. And probably we're going to want to just leave it at a nice, moderate, and standard curve like this. Okay, so now that we've started to kind of set up this first clip in our edit and it's starting to look kind of okay, let's go ahead and work with the second clip and apply everything that we learned to this second clip to get some additional practice. Okay, and you'll remember this second clip was the one that we exported a couple parts ago, and we're running into the same problem where it's too long for the outline that we have here. So in order to work with this, what we're going to do is we're going to right click, we're going to click time, and we're going to click enable time remapping, right? This was the very first important step. Now immediately what you're going to see is that a keyframe is going to appear at the start of the clip and at the end of the clip, which represents the beginning and the end, as I described before. Now if I play through it, I kind of like how it looks. I like how it looks. And then as I reach the end, I notice that the camera stops moving, which is kind of an interesting, I think, quirk or bug in Flashback. For some reason, the camera motion kind of tends to stop early. So I don't actually want to include these few frames where the camera is kind of staying still. So in order to fix that, it's going to be very easy. We're just going to go right to where the camera stops moving, which is right about there. And we're going to, instead of dragging this keyframe over, right, that's not the solution. That's just going to shorten the clip and include that still frame. We're going to go over here. We're going to add a new keyframe, right? Trim this so that this part's no longer visible. And we can just delete this old keyframe, right? So now the new ending is going to be right here, just before the camera stops moving. Perfect. Now, of course, the clip is much too long. So as I described before, we're just going to go over to the end and we're going to drag this keyframe exactly to where we need it to be, which is right there. And then we're going to go ahead and press Alt right bracket to trim the clip to be just right there. So now that you can see, the clip is exactly the length we need it to be. So if we play it back, it should look like this. But now over here, obviously we haven't manipulated the graph editor at all, so you can see we're again running into the same problem where the clip just kind of looks very stiff and linear, but we just learned how to fix that here in this part. All we're going to do is we're going to right click both of these. We're going to go ahead and right click here, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Then we're going to go ahead and click on this graph icon and go into the graph editor. And now we can edit it in a similar way to what we had with the first clip. So it's going to kind of come in very strong. It's going to slow down and then it's going to exit out. So if we look at the transition between these two clips, now it's going to look like this. much better, right? Now this edit is finally starting to shape together. Now the reason this transition looks so good is because if we look at this keyframe here, you can see it's kind of sloping and beginning to start. And then if we go to the next clip, you can see that this one is kind of continuing what that first clip started and continuing that slope and then resolving, right? So it's kind of this really nice sort of S curve that's going in between these two clips. So that transition looks nice and smooth. Okay, progress. Lots and lots of progress, but there is still quite a bit we can do to make this transition look even better than it already does, and we're going to go ahead and dive into that in the next part. And remember, I went over this second clip and all the time remapping very, very fast because that's all stuff that I went over in the previous parts. So if what I did here was too confusing for you, just go ahead and rewatch the previous part, and then you can maybe even rewatch this part, and then that will hopefully give you a refresher on how we manipulated this clip to make it like how we just did. And again, if it's still confusing for you, if you're still not getting it, that Discord server is available to you. There is a Discord channel where you are able to ask questions, and I will be there responding to any questions that you might be having on the tutorials or editing in general.